Just a key out of Mundi Conant. How we doing? How we doing? I can safely tell you, it's great to be in the Empire today. And of course, you are watching Arnold Holland News, the only news you'll ever need because you have no other choice. We got a lot to go over today. We got a lot cooking this week. In case you missed a small little detail going on here in our video gaming division. First and foremost, we're gonna be talking on today's video, probably the longest in-depth game design explanation I've ever seen CG give publicly. Why Relic Delta? And some funny stuff. The left hook is Relic Delta. The right hook is, well, Relic 10 is confirmed. A double whammy. They're like, I'd rather have Relic 10 than Relic Delta. And they're like, well, why not both? Pow, pow. And I guess some other decent news in here. Well, we don't really know how good. Some Relic alleviation that they are talking about. New content, game modes. Have to wait and see what that looks like. And before we go into all this, I just want to thank you guys. Oh my gosh, so much for the overwhelming positivity yesterday. For those that missed it on stream, I want to announce it there for the first time. The birth of 25/8 Games, a new studio that I founded, a community first focused studio. And we're finally working on our first game with the first details being announced later on this week. I'm already kind of, I guess, dropping my first little character teaser reveal, with the first one being Barricade. Gonna go over so much more in regards to the genre, more of the world that I'm building here, and the beginning of a new IP and franchise. And this is, again, a game that's gonna be community focused, community first. If you ever wanted to have the opportunity to help craft and kind of guide a game that you think is cool, this is gonna be the opportunity. A lot more characters to come, and you guys can vote on how they look and all. Again, we're gonna go so much in detail. Super excited. Barricade leading the charge as the first character to showcase this world, and I wonder what this might be on top of that. But anyways, it's kind of ironic timing with all this because I'm gonna talk more about this on Friday, October 3rd, 1 p.m. Eastern time. My journey leading up to this moment making games, and it's kind of funny. It's ironically kind of timing with all this. I've talked to some of the greatest minds. I've talked to people that made video games into mobile, PC, console, the biggest games of all time, even some more niche games. I've had such an awesome opportunity to do so. I've also talked with basically big publishers out there that publish a variety of games for mobile, console, understanding what these people are looking for, how they think. And I gotta say, the premise that Siege is trying to put here, that Relic 9 isn't really special, not doing enough. I get that. But the way they're going about it, they're presenting a lot of straw mans, I think, and kind of a more like, oh, if we don't do Relic Delta, the game dies. I'm like, really? That's the solution? That's the ultimatum we have? I digress. Looking forward to talk more about the game later on this week. Also the Kickstarter, which I'm gonna need your guys' help, just even putting on a watch list as we get ready to show gameplay early next year. Guys, it's been the best year of my life, and I can't wait to talk more about it. But let's talk more about Relic Delta. It's a long post. There's a lot to unpack here, as they say themselves. But let's just get to it. We've heard the concerns about splitting focus between increasing Relic levels on older characters to account for Relic Delta while still wanting to pursue newer characters. With our upcoming release, we'll be changing how players get and invest in new characters. All right, if we can get past that whole nonsense of Kyrotech, maybe this will be an easier pill to swallow. Again, I have to wait and see. As they say, more details to come on that later, just like I got more details to come later on this week. But the relevant portion for Relic Delta is this. You'll be progressing through gear tiers and lower Relic levels without needing to use gear or Relic materials, which frees up those resources to be spent on older characters. Okay. All right, you might be easing up the punches a little bit. I need to see it in action though. Additionally, both droid brains and higher level signal data will be added as outputs from the scavenger, giving players an alternative means of acquiring those materials. Only will need 5,000 Kyrotech to craft one droid brain. I kid you. I don't know what it's gonna be like, so at least they're giving you an option. Again, it depends on the conversion, because man, that Jawa scavenger, he knows how to scam us good. Let me tell you, give him like 5,000 pieces, like, all right. He's like Rick from Pawn Stars, like, best I can give you is $2 or something like that, right? And there's a playtest still ongoing. We are continuing to gather feedback from the testers and the community. We simply want to provide context that folks have been requesting. Let's get into it. Again, the way I'm looking at this, it's like they're negotiating with us. How fast do we want to crash into the wall? Do we want to go 200 miles an hour, 95 miles an hour, 66 miles an hour? Feels weird, but it's their game at the end of the day, I suppose. And all we can do is try to ease how fast they want to crash into a wall, I guess. So here we go. A lot of game design conversation here. We're going to start with the basics of vertical progression. Games of progression fall into two main categories. You got horizontal and you also got vertical, with horizontal being the primary power vector, where power does not increase. Rather, over time, you gain additional tools in your tool belt to solve the same sorts of problems at similar power levels. Now, vertical is slightly different. as a primary vector. Power increase with the new releases doesn't have to be a rapid increase, and the team has done an excellent job of taking measured and calculated steps when it comes to the power increases. The power increase can come from new equipment, stats, kits, abilities, new systems, etc., etc. So in a game like this, these hero collector type of games, yeah, that's primarily, if you have to summarize it, that's kind of what you kind of look at the end of the day when you boil down a game. Both types of games need new content. Yes! At least in the context of a live service game. 1 trillion bajillion %. They have different constraints and objectives with this new content, but they both need it. Vertical progression games generally need new content at higher power that players transition away from older content. So in Galaxy of Heroes, of course, a primarily vertical progression game with some horizontal progression elements, your account gets stronger. I mean, yeah, most of it's like, here's a new relic level, here's a new Omicron, things like that. Your account gets stronger over the time, resulting in gaining stronger characters, increasing gear levels, relic levels, acquiring and refining mods, etc., etc. And you rightfully want to engage with new content, which most of the time needs to be at the higher power levels to absorb. Yeah, no one wants to fight the old school mod, battles, right? We're past that, right? And reward the power increase of your account. So what they don't want to make this necessarily mean they're suddenly going to leap forward multiple relic levels. We do have a relic 10 coming, but they're not going to go relic 20, right? They're going to slow release it. They do want to increase more relic levels over time, with 10 being the one today that we're going to discuss, but also want to bring players along the same pace and catch players up to make sure all players are able to engage with and enjoy the new content. So here comes their first problem: scalability. In systems design, we want to make systems as scalable as possible. So if you build your system in a way that adapts to or accounts for the changes to the game that you don't yet know are coming, you've built a robust and scalable system. But if you build a bunch of features that aren't scalable, at some point you have to spend all your time updating older things rather than building cool stuff for players to enjoy. And this is kind of what we've talked about pretty extensively. The context of, let's say, for example, Rise of the Empire. Now, whether that was the right way of going about it, I think we can all agree that was the most obvious form of scalability. They designed that game where we can beat the heck out of it for so many years, we still cannot max it out. Not so much from a difficulty perspective, more from a spreadsheet perspective. I think that's one of the problems of Capital Games lately and how they're designing Galaxy Heroes. It feels like a lot of the decisions they're making is mostly just based off spreadsheets, numbers, and not so much fun, right? At the end of the day, I play a game, at least I can speak for myself, I play a game because, well, I want to enjoy playing a game. I don't want to be like, if I do this, I get two. I mean, that is part of the game. It's a resource collector at the end of the day. Some would argue that's maybe the more important part, managing your resources, but it's very much spreadsheety is what it feels like right now. Spreadsheety, get it, Gary. Anyways, I digress. Let's keep moving on. This isn't to say we shouldn't or don't update older systems. Look at GAC. Out of Grand Arena, I will admit though, your GAC is starting to get stale. It's not scaling, right? There's a somewhat of a problem with that. Raids 2.0 kind of got issues with that as well. There are so many solutions to a problem with raids. I feel like they just turned it into a marquee plus. I look at, for example, I play a ton of Raid Shadow. Actually, it's funny. A lot of people have been sharing. There's an ad of me kind of floating around out there. It's so weird seeing me in an ad. But for example, let me just put it this way. Their version of a rank core raid is still hyper relevant. It is one of the most important ways still to this game in raid 6 years later, whatever it is, maybe 7, I'm losing track of it, where you still want to make sure you're dominating in this because you get super important materials in this. And it's one of the most important game modes when you start as a new player to tackle this. And of course, they add new raids. So basically, they have like their heroic AAT raid, they have their Sith Triumvirate raid, however you want to describe it. These are still very important. So I get what CG's saying, but sometimes the solution they're coming up with, it's like, there's better ways of doing it. That's all I'm trying to say. And also Ships 2.0. Yeah, once upon a time, Ships, original version of it, had a lot of problems with it. And essentially all they did is they kind of trimmed it down from 5 starting to 3 starting and playing around with the reinforcements a bit more. But even scalable systems need updates sometimes. But the more you can build your game to have scalable systems, the easier it is to maintain and make more fun stuff for players. So, man, I can't believe it's been 6 years ago. They transitioned from Gear to Relic as the primary progression system for characters. Really, 6 years ago? Gosh, yeah, I guess 2019. My goodness. Relics were added because adding a new gear tier was a massive undertaking, with pieces with variety of stats had to be designed that somehow benefited the entire roster. I do agree, that the old gearing system, the Relics is, I guess, cleaner is maybe the way of upgrading, right? Instead of all these different customized pieces of gear that you need. So I'll grant them that, I suppose. New piece of variety of stats had to be designed that somehow benefited the entire roster, roughly equal using different combinations despite kits wanted to focus on varying stats. So the balance work was even worse. needing to account for a multiple possible combination of these buckets of stats as they call for each character. And the roster's only grown since then. The reason for Relic's entire existence is to solve that scalability problem of the gear system. So relics are essentially, if you think about it, gear 2.0, which is the case, right? You're still using gear. You're just converting it into more, I guess, simplified pieces, I suppose, right? However, relics haven't seen a new level progression in 4 years, and I will grant them that too. We've been saying, oh, Relic 10. This explains why we maybe just didn't get Relic 10. I was actually really surprised, and I'll give CG a little bit of credit here. You know, when I look at, for example, Marvel Strike Force, so they've been up many gear levels in the past 4 years. Galaxy Heroes has been relatively the same at Relic 9 or whatever it's been. So that much, they are telling the truth. They've been kind of stagnant for the most part, but they've been finding more ways of making it incentivized to get to Relic 9. And I think they could do even more, but I think they're just kind of saying, Relic Delta is our solution. This is due to two aspects. There was nothing to absorb, showcase, and reward that power increase. And there was a minimal to no reason to push for higher progression. I would say mostly true. I'm going to say it myself. I said it many times. There's not a lot of characters out there that benefit from a Relic 9. Of course, they can just drop a carrot in front of you and say, hey, you need Relic 9 for this team, this new galactic legend. But I think there are creative ways of making Relic 9 interesting. It just requires some creative kit design. Like, for example, let me go over some characters that I upgraded farther than I needed to. Look at Omega Fugitive. The reason why I took her up is because she's able to do some massive cooldown reduction. And the bigger the pool of health that she has, or however it is here, you know, she's able to reduce cooldowns by a ton. Here we go. Yeah, here we go. Dispel debuffs and all bad batch allies. Yeah. And an additional 50% protection per Omega's Relic Amplifier. So that's one interesting way that you can do something with this. And then for each 20% health recovery received with the ally that has 100% health, they reduce their cooldowns by 1. So this is an interesting way to make Relic 9 more meaningful. There's a variety of characters like this, right? More relics mean more healing, right? And also the possibility for more cooldown reduction. So there are creative ways to make Relic 9 necessary or fun or something to chase after without saying you need to do it because our spreadsheet tells you to. So that's just, I guess, a quick example. There's a variety of other ones, right? Like Jar Jar, I think, has additional benefits for his shield generator, whatever the case might be. Marin, right? Tuskens, the more, you know, relics you have, the more damage over times, plagues, things of that nature. So there are creative ways of making Relic 9 more interesting, in my opinion. But anyways, moving on. New content usually isn't cheap, 100%. That's something also I've been learning over the past couple years, preparing for this moment. Hence why I'm going to need help with a Kickstarter once I get the core of the game built, as we're going to discuss later on this week. So we often have to make difficult choices around what gets built. It's bad to introduce new level progression without the content to absorb it 1 trillion%. Honestly, what they should have done first, and I said this a couple days ago, right, or last week, if you're going to do this, at least introduce something new. This game is starving for some new, especially PvP content, fixes for Grand Arena, more importantly for Territory Wars. Just saying, here's Relic Delta, have at it. They could have softened the blow on this by at least adding some new PvP stuff, right? So, since there's no new reason to invest or use the new level progression. So as we said, it's bad to introduce new levels of content without increased progression to enter and take it on because, well, you can't enter it and complete it. So here's the core problem. Relics don't have a scalability system component promoting and rewarding investment. And here's where the big problem comes from. You don't see it as saying promoting strategy, investment. And that's where I kind of get to the core problem. I think they're looking at this from a spreadsheet side of things. And that is unfortunately one of the things about mobile games. And this is what investors look for too. They want to see investment for people to keep upgrading stuff, keep buying stuff. So yeah, so again, I know where they're coming from here. This is, I guess, a way of them saying we didn't monetize relics well enough. That's the best way to say it. It's not so much the strategy, because they're not talking about strategy, because there is more strategy in my opinion. They use an example of Gear 12 Malicos versus Raid. That's what I think a game should be rewarding. But in a game like this, which is, yes, fun's important, don't get me wrong, but the spreadsheet for a lot of investors, publishers that care about these type of games and these type of developers, yeah, it's they look at the spreadsheet stuff at the end of the day. That's, I guess, one of the side effects of a game like this, which again, we find fun in it, and there's a way to balance it. I think, again, they're focusing too much on spreadsheets rather than the fun element as much. What eventually happens to a live service vertical progression game is that it stops releasing vertical progression. What happens to any live service game when the core gameplay loop is removed? So this is essentially... Yes, core gameplay loop, very important. What is the player doing? They're doing battles, they're getting materials, unlocking new champions, throwing it into the meta. That's the core loop, right? And every game's got a core loop. It's not necessarily mobile game specific, right? you know, look at, for example, I don't know, the one game I played earlier this year was Schedule 1. That's got a core loop too, right? You know, you're getting resources, you're making stuff, you're upgrading your base, you know, and you're selling the stuff. So that's got a core loop. So every good game needs a solid core loop, right? So that's nothing specifically to a live service game. So, but they're basically saying if we don't do this, the game's gonna die, right? Our core loop is completely shattered. I think that's a little extreme. There are two operational reasons to invest. Again, you're seeing invest. Oh yeah, the reasons to invest, players invest. How about fun and strategy? The stats given on each individual level and content entry requirements, but at some point, the stats have diminishing returns and requirements can't update as players' rosters evolve. Players invest and unlock entry requirements for content they want to engage in, but the higher the relic level, the scarcer its materials and the less likely players are to invest in those resources. Man, when I first put the first cartridge in my Nintendo 64, no, actually, sorry, Super Nintendo, whatever it was, I wasn't thinking, man, I need to invest. No, I want to play. I need to play this game, not to invest. It's like, this is, again, it's kind of a weird thing. You're a game studio. You're not. Anyways, let's just keep moving. We've heard from the community that players don't think Relic 9 is worth investing outside the requirements. Mostly true, I would say. But as I said, there are ways to make Relic 9 interesting. Omega, Marin, the list goes on and on and on. You know, it's kind of curious to see how you can make characters better by investing in those relics. So they got the wrong message if that's what they really took from it. But yes, worth investing outside of requirements, jails, and the occasional tank. But again, Omega's not a tank. I find cool uses out of that. There's other characters I have upgraded just to simply, you know, get more stats or get more abilities out of them. Relic 9 still loses to Relic 5. Yeah, just like Relic 8 does. Relic 9 doesn't make any battles in early phase of TB meaningfully faster. I will say that might be the one convincing thing about Territories, makes it faster. Okay, you might have, man. Yeah, it's kind of a quasi sim in a way. If I'm bringing my full Relic 9 team fighting the Relic 5s, okay. Relic 9 doesn't make Assault Battle Challenge tiers or Proving Grounds or other events much easier. It comes up short in both PvE and PvP content, both solo and group content. And again, I agree with, like, yeah, Relic 9. That's why I haven't cared too much about Territory Wars. It's like, you know, outside the core things, it's not too important. But again, there are reasons to make it more incentivized, right? So anyways, you could just say, make the R9 stats bigger. But again, it's not just stats. Not just stats is what you could do, right? You can increase, like, what is it? Is it Jar Jar? The more relics he has, the more generator shields he's got. So again, there are more mechanical things than just stats that they can do. We'll address that possible approach in just a bit. But the short response to that is a series of questions. What does it mean for Relic 10? What does the impact of Relic 10 mean for Relic 11? Higher Relic levels in the future. How will this be sustainable for multiple future levels of progression? And how does an increase in stats on Relic 9 help players below R9? Yeah, that's gonna be a big problem. We have to look at the long-term future of relics, not just the levels that players currently own. So in the end, the problem is far bigger than protect higher relic investment, which is much as we reveal to the testers initially. Yes, that is part of the problem, but it's not the whole problem. A lot of this is about investment. I don't think there's a problem with strategy. I really don't. I don't. I even look at, you know, for example, you know, Raid Shadow Legends and how they're able to, and the game's been bigger audience. I think it's even making more money than Galaxy of Heroes lately. There really hasn't been any new forms of progression. You know, it's mostly new characters, kits, how you use those kits. They did add like a relic system, which the best way to describe it, it's sort of like a datacron that's permanent in your roster that you can equip and remove. But instead of having 300% like offense, mild gains, right? Like a little bit of resistance, defense, you know, like an extra little ability on it. So it's a much tamer version of datacrons that are permanent. So there are ways to make it more interesting. I think Raid gets away with it because they're able to pump out a lot of characters to keep the content, the meta fresh for all these different things that they're putting out there. So here are their options, possible solutions. We've seen some suggestions to the community on other ways to solve this core problem, albeit without knowing what that problem was. Now the problem is revealed. Well, it's in their mind. I did it. Yeah, whatever. Let's just go. Let's just keep going. Do nothing. Example, the game stays at Relic 9. And no one says it has to stay at Relic 9. Players eventually have enough resources to take their entire roster to R9. There is no... and this is the thing. Eventually, yes, in a world of infinite time, they're not wrong. Everyone could get the Relic 9 if you just stayed stagnant, and maybe in 100 years, everyone get the Relic 9. So they're not entirely wrong, but even myself, I mean, Relic 9 came out, what, 4 years ago? I got a good chunk of Relic 9s, but by no means do I have a full Relic 9 roster, right? So anyways, moving on. There is no new level progression, no new challenging content that players can strive to overcome. Again, all these weird straw mans they're making. as players don't have upward progression to pursue. In a primarily vertical progression game, there is no longer a reason to engage with the core gameplay loop as we described. Play, get rewards, invest, get stronger, play. The loop rinses and repeats. Rewards don't matter, there's nowhere to invest. The core of the game ceases to function. The player experiences its ruin. Capital Games, you are not the first company to do a live service game. Live service games have existed for a long time, before Galaxy and after Galaxy of Heroes. It's so weird saying if we don't do this, the gameplay is ruined. Where I think the problem is Relic Delta might ruin the gameplay and the strategy that people have come to love in Galaxy of Heroes. Like there are, again, mobile gaming is kind of a different beast of its own compared to your more traditional console, PC, whatever type of experience out there. So change the Relic stats on existing levels. R9 is updated to add a Master 50 and 100 speed. So I always thought if they were going to add a new Relic tier, I thought, okay, if they put a ton of speed on it, yeah, okay, I could see that being a bit more of an incentive to get to those higher tiers. Not saying I would advocate for it, but I imagine, because I do identify that Relic 9 is not really super necessary because of the problem of scarcity and the payoff, right? Well, you can fix that by, addressing scarcity or the payoff, right? Result, the value that players receive from their prior investment and upcoming investment goals changes. Some characters probably come out winners. I mean, that's always the case, right? But many would certainly be losers. Different characters are impacted to differing degrees, which results in a fractured solution. Wow, fractured solution. What's my thing here? What does my thing say, Gary? Can you show them real quick? It's, the fracture has struck. Huh. Ironic. Anyways, keep it going, baby. Keep it going. Fracture solution rather than a solidified one. The meta still shifts potentially drastically, especially if mastery constituent stats are touch. Relic goes beyond R9 aren't directly supported, and this doesn't address the core problem of scalability. Well, again, what about just making kits more interesting to interact with this? Like, again, instead of making it spreadsheet solution, why don't you just make a fun solution, right? I don't know, just again, Omega I think is a really cool example. Like, she's got so much great plug and play viability. It's surprising they left it. I'm surprised. I give CG credit where credit's due that they didn't mess with her kit. I like that if I wanted to, I could throw in a Nihilist team, turn one insta kill. Pretty neat stuff. So again, those are creative solutions to the Relic 9 problem. Anyways, but again, I think more people would like a Relic 9 Omega. It's just kind of tough to get there. Introducing Relic 10. So they are introducing it. They do confirm it here. Add a Relic 10 by itself. Relic 10 exists with no new content to support. Again, why can't you make no new content? It's like, I don't get it. Again, there's all these strawmans like, well, if we do R10, we can't do any new content. It's like, I don't know, like just weird strawmans here. Again, there's a core issue to address here, but they make it seem like it's either this or the highway or in the trash this game goes. With Relic 9 being difficult to acquire, many wouldn't have Relic 10 characters. Well, you can fix that. Like, our hands are tied. We can't do anything here. The top end would invest as much as necessary for any new requirements and also updating GL teams, and R10 would be in the exact same state as R9. Again, if you're not finding more creative solutions than simply just stat checking. Basically, they're doing stat check warfare right now. It plays into and exacerbates the existing problem rather than solving it. So they can add damage, increase damage on top of a few relic levels. Again, more stat-specific things. All this is just stat check warfare. That's the issue I think that people are having with all this. It's going to penalize the actual strategy of the game that I fall in love with, you guys fall in love with. How many times is it satisfying taking a low-gear Imperial Trooper team and beating, let's say, a Star Killer, or let's say someone put like Supreme Leader Calvin of Daka Zombie, something like that, and you're like, dang, I just knocked them out of the park. The game should reward that, like an actual game, but a game that's focused on spreadsheets. This is where it gets us, where they're doing stat checks and stat check warfare. Well, let's keep moving on. I'm not going to bother reading this. Again, this is just more add damage, increase damage, decrease damage at relic level. So it's all these solutions. They're just focusing on stats. And here's their Relic Delta solution. Relic Delta was conceived about a year ago at this point. The base and inspiration for the system actually comes within our own games. Basically, they're saying, no, we didn't look at Marvel Strike Force. It's okay, CG. It's all right. 10 years ago, the game launched with a level delta system whereby attacks would experience modified crit chance, accuracy, evasion, damage, and resist chance based on the difference between the attackers and defenders' character levels. Only crit chance and resist chance have any value, so only those two were ever in play. So recognize that most vertical progression live service games have some kind of delta system to facilitate. I think important to say it's maybe mobile game live service. You know, yes, they have some sort of Delta system potentially, but again, their live service games goes beyond just mobile, right? To facilitate and conquering old content and not pushing too far ahead on higher level content, we decided to update the relics to use a similar system. So a level Delta system is used so broadly because it is incredibly scalable. While players are leveling and working toward max progression, the Delta sticks with them and applies equally to their experience regardless of where they're at progression curve. If progression levels are increased, the system accounts for that by automatically applying equally as players work towards the new cap, without requiring bandwidth from developers to balance and maintain bespoke bonuses here. I mean, to be fair, CG, you're having a hard time balancing ships. I mean, maybe that kind of tells us more than this. The fact that you couldn't even balance Rogue One in obvious situations, that's something all of us figured out in a few minutes. I think that really speaks to, again, they're not focusing on the gameplay, they're focusing on spreads. Like, man, I should have said that earlier. I think that's honestly the big thing to hit home here. So anyways, we're going to keep moving on here. For all players at Relic levels, it speeds up and simplifies older content, protects newer content and investment made to engage with that content, supports a distinction in power level in PvP, it rewards those who have made the climb. It promises your investment of time and resources will be rewarded. I'm not really seeing anything that says this will be fun and your strategy will be rewarded. Again, unless you buy into the premise that this game is more about the spreadsheet, the resource collection element, which that is a big part of this game, right? You have to build it to start playing it. So, you know, I guess it depends how you look at it. We chose for Relic Delta to only apply to damage because we want the stats on Relic levels themselves to still matter. Individual Relic levels should be still able to express varied stats based on what the meta needs at the time that Relic level is introduced. We've heard the concern on Relic Delta limiting strategy. All right, here we go. Let's talk about mods, counters, theory crafting. But we're not seeing a complete elimination of strategy during either internal testing or the current playtest. Okay, well, they kind of contradict themselves though. We fully intend for strategy to continue to be a central aspect of both PvP and PvP content. In terms of what? In terms of what you Relic and how high of a Relic? Yes, Relic Delta eliminates some cases. Gear 12 Maliko's beating Relic 8 rate. That is the strategy to this game though. It's at least a big element to it. Also introduces some strategy around which characters to invest in. And again, they're looking at investing spreadsheets and by how much based on your usage of them and their place in the larger meta. So I feel like this is a bit contradictory what they're saying. You know, part of the fun of this game is like, hey, min-max, right? Take this team to this level, they're gonna get most of the stuff done for you. Yeah, so I kind of disagree with how they laid this out here. We are aware that there have been other similar games with, what other similar games? Marvel Strike Force, right? With what seems like the same concept on the surface, but there are two critical differences. Well, tell the people which one it is, explain so they can look themselves, right? That make this more favorable for free to play and folks who have invested into Galaxy of Heroes. The system is a gradual curve rather than a massive boost at just one level of difference. Okay, perhaps. The system is a single progression path. Relics are becoming more accessible in the same release. Again, we will be the judge of that. It's unfortunate to go into more details because that could soften the blow on this a bit. Rather require investment in multiple disparate systems that have differing rates of accessibility. So the variations, alternate versions, okay, they can kick it in later, okay, until Relic Delta doesn't take effect until you're Relic 7 or Relic 9. Lower Relic levels are unaffected, and this is apparently inconsistent. I'm going to kind of skim through all this again. It's mostly just looking at stats again. Only increase damage, don't decrease it. They're saying this helps address the problem, but doesn't protect the higher Relic characters. Again, investment. CG is consistent with how they formed this game. They want to protect the people that spend more, invest more in the characters, even grander in matchmaking, right? They're going to put you up against people with bigger rosters. They want to reward the people that are having a hard time with bigger rosters to give them an easy dunk on a smaller roster. And in situations of a tiebreaker, they reward the people with a bigger GP. Or they don't want to have situations where a character is better at low gear or low relics. They always want to encourage you to go higher and higher and higher with your investment. So they are consistent in that. And again, for a game like this, yeah, I can understand to a degree why that's important to them. All right, yeah, so here we go. Let's just get to the future. With these changes, Relic 10 is being added to the game. So there we go. They finally got to it. Though please see above as to why it doesn't solve the core problem. It will use a new signal data, which will not be farmed with energy, so it doesn't corrupt your current signal data farming. I would appreciate if they came up with a different Relic solution for the signal data. It would be nice if Cantina Energy can focus solely on the Cantina, like shards that you need to farm, and then signal data has its own thing. You know, that is one thing I do enjoy that Siege. You kind of, you know, delegate the energy to a specific part of the game, right? That's why some people hate Cantina character farms. I like Cantina character farms. So like on my free-to-play account, I almost have a 7-star Depa Balaba within like a week or two, however long it's been. So I do prefer it in some ways, but if they could separate signal data from that, or maybe add it to the scavenger like it sounds like what they're doing, okay, that could be a positive change, at least from a farming perspective here. Okay, moving on. Moving on here, finally, there will be a new game mode, new events, and update to the era-related journey guide events, ensuring that all players get to use new characters right away for valuable rewards. We want all players to be able to enjoy the latest characters and content being released to the game. I feel like they're doing a better job with this aspect. For the longest time, there just wasn't a reason to get the new characters, even as some of the free-to-play, newer account, because like, it's gonna take me so long to farm them, then I gotta get them to 7 stars, I gotta get the Kyra to finally get the relics. That's many, many months. Now, like my free-to-play account, I have all the Dark Side clones. They're not at 7 stars yet, but all the Dark Side clones are at like Relic 3, 4, 5, whatever they are right now. I think the only 7-star I have is Disguised Clone Trooper, which is why I like Cantina Farm so much faster to farm that up and running for me. So like I give them kudos there. And I'm hoping that maybe, again, this new system brings it to, if you can ignore everything below relics, no more Kyrotech problems, maybe this is gonna be an easier pill to swallow. We hope this context helps our choice on Relic Delta make a bit more sense. We will monitor the impact of Relic Delta and PvP modes and make adjustments as needed. So the Relic Delta is coming. This is essentially what they're saying. We are passionate about the game and care about you, our players. As always, we'd love to hear you on your feedback on this and your continued feedback on Relic Delta. So, again, honestly, my thing is here, they talk about the problem that not enough people are upgrading to Relic 9, and the Relic 9 doesn't do much. I still don't think Relic Delta is the solution here. Honestly, for me, again, you can make Relic 9 more exciting. I gave you a few examples with Omega, for example. You create some sort of PvE content that's going to reward relics, not punishing you for skipping them, right? Something like that. And making things more accessible, and it sounds like they're going to do that. So again, they could get more people to Relic 9. They just, again, investment. They want to protect the investment, the people that spend money, right? They want them to feel like they're the top dogs in the game, right? So it's sort of like a fear-based system, a stat check warfare thing going on here. So it's basically their answer was, why are people relicking? Well, let's just make them suffer, I suppose, if they don't. So I feel like this is, again, we'll have to wait and see how this, fully pans out. It's going to be the progression element. If they make it easier to get there, it might be a little bit simpler, but for right now, it's my fear is it's going to shrink, maybe roster diversity. It's going to kill a lot of counters like they talked about, low gear stuff out there. And it's going to pressure people to spend more money to maintain their rank. And I know my free-to-play account's going to get massively screwed in Kyra again. Every time I finally get settled back into Grander and have to do a massive change, they hit us with another whammy. Anyways, people, that's been Arnold Holland. It is, holy cow, what a long post this is. I don't know if your eyes are glazing like I am right now. I'm like, oh boy, that was a lot of stuff going on here. Well, we'll see how things go. They said recently that they're going to bring this after the Khmer Conquest. So we still have a few more months until they roll it out. And again, it's all about how hard should we crash into the wall with this. So leave that like, comment down below, subscribe. Looking forward to revealing more of the characters of the brand new game that 258 Games is working on, and including you in the process as we develop that game over the upcoming next month. My friends, thank you so much. And always remember, until we meet again, gosh dang, I don't know what's going on with Galaxy of Heroes, but I can tell you one thing. It's great to be in the Empire today.